we Googled this guy's name, and we found out that this guy ended up being a romance scam artist.
Oh.
And he would try to guilt people into having the other person put a deposit into the escrow, get past the contingency periods, so now the deposit was at risk. So the romance person that was getting scammed had skin in the game, like, oh my gosh, well, if I don't close on this deal now, my $50,000 deposit could be lost.
Yeah.
And so then the email comes, hey, I need 20 grand to get through customs, through port, so I could come and buy this house for you.
So I remember I was, I think this is probably one of my first few months doing real estate, and I was holding this open house in this area called Beverly Hills Post Office. So it's just above Beverly Hills, up in the hills. And the thing with these houses is that they often overlook other houses. And this was this incredible brand new construction. I think they were asking at the time like 3.9 million. And this is like...
This is like 2011, you said?
No, this is probably 2008 or 9.
Oh, okay, so top of the recession.
Yeah. I mean, this is just when things were going down and weren't selling. And I was holding an open house, and I just remember this lady with her kid coming down to me and just saying...
A lady came down to you?
Yeah, she came down to me. And she says, go upstairs, and I highly recommend you close the door and the curtains of the master bedroom.
She told you to do that?
She told me to do that. And I said, why? And she says, go up and you'll see. And I'm just like, oh no. Like,
there's an Axeman.
There's probably, yeah, something's probably up. So I went upstairs, and of course I looked over the balcony, and because you're looking over at other homes, I saw the neighbors were in the pool, just going at it.
Oh,
Literally going at it during the open house. And like, you know, I'm just like brand new to the business, and like totally brand new. So of course I just closed the door, closed the blinds, and have not heard from that since.
Whew. Was that one of your listings?
No, I mean that was a...
Thank goodness.
Yeah, no, that was someone else's listing that I was sitting. They're open.
Yeah, because that's a tough phone call to make.
Yeah, and that was actually the same house that I met that guy, the DL Clifton guy.
Oh.
Yeah, same house. That's just been a crazy house for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's weird. Because, yeah, I mean, how do you tell your seller that this house isn't selling because...
Well, hey, maybe that could be a selling point for someone.
For somebody, yeah.
They come down and be like, I'll take it. How much are you asking? 100,000 over. Sign it now.
And I want some of these trees trimmed down right here.
I just could put my telescope right here, put my camera right there. Oh, it'll be perfect.
Yeah, I think naked stories are always good. Beach areas by us seem to be, everybody just has to have glass windows everywhere, and nobody has blinds. So with this vacant house that we remodeled, and the folks were about to lose it to bankruptcy, and so one of the people moved back into it, and we fully staged it. So they're sleeping and like breaking the staging furniture, and it ended up being a disaster with the furniture part. But one day I got 4 calls from different neighbors that he was walking up and down the 3-story house naked.
What?
And all the lights are on. And so...
what is it with nudity in houses that go like hand in hand?
But I had to call him and tell him somehow, like, please don't walk around your house naked. Because people are calling me and being turned off from showing the property. Like, oh, I guess they're not seeing this one.
That's happened to me a few times. I've walked in twice where we've made a showing and like we've confirmed it, and then I walk in and you kind of know something's up. And because you open the door and it's like the lights are all off, everything is closed up, and like it's kind of a mess. And
one bedroom door is shut.
Yeah, bedroom door is shut. Maybe there's like a candle going, or like there's something, some chocolates out. It's a highly romantic scene. That's
cork opener, you know.
But you're there with the client, and then of course you're like you knock and you're like hello, but they can't hear you.
Nobody responds ever.
And then of course you open the door and you hear like people like this, close the door, and then usually one of the they'll open the door a little bit and be like we're busy right now, can you come back in like 10 minutes?
Can you give us 10 minutes?
That's happened to me.
I'll give you 5.
That's happened to me twice. Once on a condo, and the second time was actually my first ever open house.
Oh no!
No joke. I show up to this house and they had a huge party the night before, and people were sleeping on the couch. People were sleeping just like around the house in different rooms. I think I showed up at like 1 and the open house started at 2, and there were like beer bottles everywhere and like alcohol. And I was like, my first ever open house. And of course I go into the master bedroom and there is the seller in bed with somebody, you know, asleep, but I'm like this awkward little 18-year-old kid who's knocking. Never met the guy before, and just like, hey, I'm here for the open house.
Here to prep, you know?
But I mean, that was quite the introduction. But sure enough, within the hour, he actually had the whole place cleaned up and everyone out, and I had a good open house.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And then I saw your video, you had a fake buyer once.
Yeah, I had a fake buyer that I met at that first house where the people were in the pool going at it. Fake buyer dragged me around to 20 to 40, $50 million homes. Had BS proof of funds. Speaking of that, we actually had another buyer recently that faked their proof of funds.
No.
Yeah, and it was on Bank of America, which we all have Bank of America, so we know what proof of funds look like. This buyer literally just went and took a screenshot on their phone of Bank of America, and then on Photoshop or something just typed in whatever.
Balances.
But it looked so fake. And you knew immediately, and as soon as you call them out, they get super defensive, like, you know, I don't even like the house anymore, like, I don't want to work with somebody who doesn't trust me like that. But it's so obviously fake, because it's not even the right font or the right size. It's just they straight up just typed in over that.
They do have font match on Google that people can find out what the font is. For people who want to fake things correctly.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now I'll show you, I'll throw out my proof of funds so you can see what real proof of funds look like. I'll put a link right here so you'll be able to see my proof of funds.
And it's secretly the affiliate link to that toilet.
Yes.
Redirect. I had a fake buyer my first full year in real estate, so 2011 or 12 or something like that.
No.
It was a beach listing that I got by printing these like 18 by 24 yard stake signs that like wholesalers use for We Buy Houses, except I had it custom printed like picture your house sold, and it was an expired listing. So I put a picture that I took of their house on it and photoshopped my for sale sign in it and sold hanging from it, and I left it at their house and I actually got the listing from that. They called me, but the problem was they lived out of town, so I had put a second one that I had printed for their house because they didn't call me fast enough, in my opinion. And I put a stamp on it. Please don't throw me away again. I assume they threw the first one away.
That's funny.
And so I left it under their gate, and they called me the same day I left the second one and said, hey, we're coming back in town and we want to meet you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I left another one at their house, and I don't want to come across like I'm high pressuring them.
Right.
So I had to like dig it back.
You are the no pressure agent, yeah.
So I ended up digging it back. I'd listed the property. First 2 days, the thing's on the market. Get this person, we want to see it, we want to buy it, and we overlisted it too. And I told this house, we overlisted it by like 150 grand. We listed it for like 1,650. Mission 1.5. Why am I this happening again?
He's like, we overlisted it.
Yes. So,
start coughing up blood every time you overlist a place.
Vomiting. Buyer comes to see it. We go, great. Like, hey, let's write an offer. Oh, and this lady's telling us, yeah, you know, I've got stage 3 breast cancer, and like I'm looking for, you know, a vacation place where I could have treatment up here, and like everything about the story was just like perfect, and we felt bad for her, and like, great, let's put the offer together. It was the agent and her. And we go, great, let's write up the offer, send over proof of funds. Well, proof of funds was coming from her husband, who was stuck leaving port out of Nigeria.
Oh.
And of course, like the proof of funds, you know, he just needed to get to a place that had internet access so he could send us the proof of funds. And so days go by, and we tentatively like, well, okay, we'll go into contract with you, like pending your proof of funds. And then, of course, 2 days later, yeah, they froze my bank accounts because they're holding up my shipment.
It happens, right?
It happens. Agent, can you just front my deposit for me?
Oh my god.
And I'll be there soon.
Jeez.
deal never ended up going through. And what we figured,
I would have loved for you to say, like, so I fronted her the funds and she closed 7 days later.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think
happened, yeah.
we were trying to find out what the scam was. And so we Googled this guy's name, and we found out that this guy ended up being a romance scam artist.
Oh.
And he would try to guilt people into having the other person put a deposit into the escrow, get past the contingency periods, so now the deposit was at risk. So the romance person that was getting scammed had skin in the game, like, oh my gosh, well, if I don't close on this deal now, my $50,000 deposit could be lost.
Yeah.
And so then the email comes, hey, I need 20 grand to get through customs, through port, so I could come and buy this house for you. They're thinking, of course, like, well, I don't want to lose my deposit. Let me give you the 20 grand.
Wow.
And then they're going to buy me a house. So what's 20 grand? They're buying me a 1.5 house.
You're giving all of our viewers ideas right now. Like, you tell them, so this is what you do step by step, this romance scam.
That's right. and fake your proof of funds well. Like, do it
Really
well.
well, yeah.
Like, do a good job. But yeah, anyway,
man, that's
step by
crazy.
step, how to do that. And not have that happen to you.
Teach everybody how to do that. That's a second channel. But no, I have another story that's actually, I was just thinking about this when you were telling me that.
Yeah.
This happened, I think, when I was about 20. I listed a home. We had the street called Beverly Glen here in Los Angeles. And it's a very long street, kind of windy towards the top, but basically some of these houses
Like
are
they're
just,
windy people at the top?
yeah, windy people.
Yeah.
Just these little driveways that are numbered, but it's very easy to confuse the numbers because it's all hillside.
Yeah.
Driveways that kind of lead up, and there's like a house over here, a house over here. So I listed this house. I think it was, I'm just going to make up a random thing just for purpose of the video. Let's call it 100 Beverly Glen.
Yeah.
Okay? And we put a for lease sign out in front of 100 Beverly Glen, and I was with a different brokerage at the time, and they handle all of your signs. You basically give them the sheet, they go and put the sign in front of the house. A day later, I get a call from a very angry homeowner.
Oh, no.
Very angry, who said that he nearly shot somebody for trespassing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says some people came on my property, went around to the backyard. I was showering. I feared for my life and safety, so I got my shotgun out, and I was about to shoot them for trespassing. And because of that, I have emotional distress, and I'm going to be suing you and your brokerage for $20,000. I said, well, what does that have to do with me? Apparently, they accidentally put the sign, the for lease sign, out front of his house, and not the house that was listed. And apparently, allegedly, someone went to his house thinking it's for lease, and then snooped around on his property.
Yeah, scope it out. Why call the agent? Let me just go show it to myself.
Yes, exactly.
And then, of course, the natural reaction is, somebody's in my backyard. I'm gonna fucking shoot them.
I'm gonna shoot them, right? Because that's what I would do. So anyway, so he ends up actually getting a lawyer to draft a letter demanding $20,000 from myself and
The threat letter.
yeah. So or I could bleep that out.
Yeah.
By myself and bleep. Yes. And sure enough, we had to respond to that letter, telling them that, like, you know, we can't, but nothing happened to that. But oh my, I was scared. And this guy was like threatening me too on the phone, telling me that I'm never going to be a real estate agent again, that he's going to go after my license, like, just a nasty, nasty guy.
People are like that out there, and
Yeah.
I think it exudes unhappiness in their life.
Oh,
that
totally.
You gotta have a shotgun because somebody's in my backyard looking around innocently.
And the type of people, honestly, looking in Bel Air are usually not the types that you would have to get a shotgun out for. Like, I'm guessing it's probably some, like, 50, 60-year-old guy who's probably looking with a suit, just, like, kind of looking around. I don't know.
Start with a taser.
Yes.
Start with something like less lethal.
Yes.
My favorite is when I get threatened with a lawsuit and somebody gets super mad at me. Like when in 2011, this attorney, here's the scoop. It was a divorce. I'm representing Mr. Seller and Mrs. Seller, and Mr. Seller signed all the paperwork to sign on this offer, which was a great offer, and it was going to expire soon. And Mrs. Seller's like, well, just send it to my attorney, and then I'll come in and I'll sign it. And he just wouldn't respond. So I sent him an email. I go, look, if this isn't signed by this specific time, the deal's gonna die. And like, I gotta sell. I'm trying to do the best for these clients. So I sent him an email. I go, this needs to be signed by this time, because if the deal doesn't go through because of your lack of communicating and making this happen, then it's your fault that the deal canceled. And I kind of left it at that.
Yeah.
And he called me. You little twerp, are you threatening me? I'm gonna sue you. And it was just like, I'm an attorney. This was sort of my welcome to the industry, is getting yelled at by an attorney that he was gonna sue me for threatening him and harassing him while I'm trying to just do a good job for the clients. So I got him this big Mrs. Fields cookie card, like, hey, thanks for helping me out, because he finally got the contract sent to me. Of course, he faxed it to me, like every page in a different orientation and out of order, just to spite me. So I brought him this big cookie card anyway, or a cookie cake, like these 13-inch Mrs. Fields cookie cakes, and like, thanks for helping me out or whatever. And I delivered it to his office. And so he was obligated to come out and shake my hand. And I'm just like, hey, thanks for helping, like all smiles.
Aww.
And you could just see in his face that he just wanted to like punch me so hard, but he couldn't. He had to say thanks. And it, to me, just kind of goes hand in hand with your shotgun guy. Like, some people, they'll just never be happy. They'll always be miserable people.
Yeah. So we'll finish it off with one last one, and this is probably one of the craziest ones for me. This is also a point where I almost wanted to quit real estate after this because of how bad this experience was. I think I was like 19 or 20 at the time. Like, all of these happened at the very beginning of my career.
It's always the beginning.
Because you're learning. There was this house up for lease and for sale. For lease, I think it was like $18,000 a month. For sale, it was like $4.5 million or something like that. And my buyer,
a small $4.5 million.
Yeah, small $4.5 million. And my client wanted it for lease. Now, it was up for lease or for sale. So usually when agents have it up for lease or for sale, they would rather sell it because that's where they make the money. But the client says, well, if it doesn't sell and we end up getting this price for lease, I'll just go and lease it. So I call the listing agent. And the listing agent is very upfront and says, you know what, we have this listing for another 2 or 3 months. We really want to sell it. We don't want to lease it. So I don't want to show it for lease. If you want to show it, you can make your client happy. I'll get you in with the understanding that we're not going to lease it. But if your client wants to see it, let's get him in and see it.
Oh no, I know where this is going.
And I knew in the back of my head, I'm like, my client really likes this house, so let's just go and show it to him. See what happens. So we show it to him, and
service to your clients.
Of course,
they fall in love.
That's the house. He says, I want to lease it. So of course I get the offer, I get the application, the credit, everything, and I submit it to him. And they, this agent acted so surprised. What is this? I told you, I made it very clear that we're not leasing this house. I'm not giving this to my client. We're going to be selling it. And that's when I was just like, cocky, little know-it-all 20-year-old agent. You have a fiduciary duty to your client to present all offers, and if you don't do that, you're in breach of your contract, and I'm going to do it myself, and I know where your client lives because it's on public record, and I will go do it myself. Oh my God. Worst mistake of my life to say something like that to a very experienced agent. Basically, and I will never name any names, threatened me with basically saying, I know where you work, I know where you park your car.
What?
Yeah, no, for real. You have no idea the connections that I have or what I have the ability to do. And I'm making this sound better than it actually is, said he will mess me up so badly if I do anything like that to ever impact his business that I will never work in real estate again, and I will never want to show up to work after that.
Wow.
And it was after that that I actually talked to another agent who was my mentor at the time, who basically just told me to let it go.
Wow.
Just tell your client, the owner's not wanting to rent it, let it go.
Wow.
And I told the client that, and the client was like, well, let's make our offer better, or this and that. And I made it very like, no, they and I had to.
Wow.
Sure enough, about 2 months later, that same person calls me back, the agent, and says, hey, is your client still interested in leasing it? Because we're about to lose the listing, and we can get your person in there. And sure enough, my guy was still looking, ended up renting him the house.
Wow.
And that agent ended up telling me, yo, it's all good, don't worry about it, glad it all worked out. And that was that.
But what's actually kind of sad about that is this is yet another example of, we've got this slime bag with a shotgun, we've got the attorneys that want to sue people, and we've got an agent here that just cost the seller another 2.5 months of holding costs, which on a $4.5 million house, how much is that? That's got to be $1,000 a day.
Probably, maybe 20 grand a month, so almost.
Okay, so 20,000. So this costs what, 2.5 months worth? So this costs the seller $50,000 in lost rental income, because the agent didn't want to present the offer because they were greedy and wanted to make the commission on the sale.
Right.
How is that service for the client?
Exactly.
But you know what? Like the title of this has to be like slam bags and real estate.
But it, you know, it does happen. The more you're in it, the
more you see that.
And these are just the stories that like we can share in front of a camera for YouTube. I mean, this is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what actually goes on behind the scenes. So I think this is a pretty fun video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Stories.
Yeah, make sure to check out Kevin's channel. Link in the description.
MeetKevin.
MeetKevin. Also, feel free to subscribe if you've watched it all the way through. If you like this, I know this is a bit different than our other videos, but I think it's just a fun video. Hope you guys enjoyed this sort of stuff. Also, feel free to add us on Instagram or you know, on Snapchat. I'm rarely on Snapchat anyway. Instagram or Snapchat. Links are everything is in the description. Thank you guys again for watching. Until next time.